we are speaking at a time when the ceasefire has been finalized for sure. But there are several questions cropping up at this point. The first and foremost one being of the sustainability of this very ceasefire deal, given that just hours after the announcement of such a crucial ceasefire agreement, we see Israel and Hamas both engaging in airstrikes against each other.
Well, you are spot on that there are many questions. I dare to say that the question you pose is actually the more minor one, because it is almost customary. It even has a special name in Hebrew for the last rounds just before a ceasefire comes into effect. So it is quite normal, and people know and are aware and are staying closer to the shelters that towards the entrance into a force of a ceasefire, there will be last attempts of both sides to achieve some, for Israel probably to achieve some targets that they've been wanting to hit and haven't done yet, and for Hamas just to show that it's still strong and didn't actually lose and still has an ability to fire into Israel. So both sides are probably going to keep trying until the ceasefire comes into effect. So that should not surprise anyone. The big questions are, and you've mentioned all of them, I think, but I would like to touch on two things. One is, remember, this is the first phase. We're talking about a third of the hostages. We still have 2/3 left. Israel doesn't even know officially who is alive and who is not. And talks on that are going to start within 2.5 weeks. And it all depends how this will carry out. And Israel has some strategic things it wants to keep in place, which Hamas does not. So the outcome of the next phases is not clear, and therefore we are not clear on how this will carry out in the long end, and if this really is a cease to hostilities or just a temporary ceasefire. The second question is the stability of the Israeli government. Yes, there is a majority in cabinet and backed by opposition also in parliament for such a deal, even though I don't think it will come to the vote specifically in parliament, only in cabinet. But we have two right-wing parties which are objecting this agreement for two reasons. Main one being we have actually not eliminated Hamas, and we're actually helping Hamas rebuild if they still control the supplies and the aid. And the second one being we're actually only getting a small part of the hostages, and we are not sure that this deal will be carried through for all of the hostages. Remember, we had a deal more than a year ago that stopped in the middle. So those are their concerns. Netanyahu's concern is that one or two of these parties will decide to leave the coalition, and this means he loses the majority in parliament and could very quickly escalate into the fall of the government and re-election.
Right, Mr. Melchior, you've actually pointed out some very crucial aspects of this very ceasefire deal, from which I'm going to take on my next question to Dr. Hussain. You know, when we speak of the ceasefire agreement, another extremely important point which Mr. Melchior has also mentioned about is what it does to the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East at this given point. Because remember, at this point, it is extremely unstable, the Middle Eastern region. It's not just the Hamas versus Israel, but we also see other, stakeholders, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. We've seen back-to-back tensions flare up amidst these nations. What does the ceasefire deal do to the geopolitical landscape on the whole in the Middle East?
It's very heartening to see that 15 months of genocide is stopping now, and all credit goes to President Trump and the Arabs, which played a key role in swinging state in giving victory to President Trump. And President Trump is the man to fulfill his promise, and he has promised, number one. Number second, President Trump is going to clear the mess created by Democrats since 2003 of Iraq war. And this deal is going to stabilize the region undoubtedly, because we know in the condition through which that deal has been signed, they brought Netanyahu to the negotiating table and signed it. And we also know that next deal is going to happen with Iran, and in Iran, what price Iran pays, that is most important. And Syria is going to be stabilized, Lebanon is going to be stabilized, Houthis will also give up their things. So I find this deal is the beginning of stabilizing the region as a whole, and it will take a couple of years to stabilize because all the Gulf countries wants peace and stability and focus on their diversification of economic policies and make the region hub of economic development. So Trump is also a man of economics. He does not want war, and he will not even tolerate that war should continue in the region. That's why he is telling that before coming me to power, every mess created by the Democrats since Obama and all should be cleared. And I am sure that this is going to happen. A new dawn to the region.
Right, a new dawn to the region. Definitely light at the end of the tunnel, as we were just mentioning. But Major General Meston, before coming to you, I just want a short response from Mr. Melchior on the matter that's in fact been brought up by Dr. Hussain. Mr. Melchior, do you also, or rather would you also say at this point that this ceasefire deal is a credit that's due to Trump, because it's a conversation that's already come up? We see it's a Biden versus Trump of a debate that's already playing out in the geopolitical landscape in the West when we speak of this very agreement. Would you say it is Trump's credit?
As the late Shimon Peres would say, yes and no. Of course, some of the credit is the pressure of the administration coming in. We know that actually, on one hand, the Biden administration had a major stake in brokering this, and it is their people who have been brokering and pressurizing. On the other hand, we also know that at some point, them pressuring Israel a lot has helped Hamas hold out until now. There are many factors contributing to this happening now, and I think the doctor alluded to some of them. Remember that Lebanon, that was supposed to help Gaza, this matter has already finished with a ceasefire that seems to be holding more than people thought it would. And in the end, Hamas has taken a serious blow. So knowing that the Trump administration coming in would not make it easier for him, this was the right time for the deal. For them, it's the same deal that was on the table more than almost 10 months ago. So therefore, 9 months ago. So therefore, there's credit to the Trump administration, but it is the Biden administration that did the real work on the ground and the brokering.
Right. In fact, Major General Meston, since I have put the question up almost for polls for all the panelists today joining me in this show, I would want your response on this matter as well, Trump or Biden, who is to take credit for this agreement. But my other part of the question to you would also be, when we speak of the ceasefire, while yes, there is a lot that goes into negotiating a deal of this sort, we're also looking at a costly affair at this given point, given the destruction, the mammoth destruction that's taken place in Gaza over the last 15 months. How does Israel and Gaza both at this given point plan on executing the ceasefire, with humanitarian aid being of prime importance and priority at the very first?
Shreya, good evening. Firstly, who takes the credit? I think the credit is both of them take credit. I think the last statement by President Trump that all hell will break loose if the hostages are not released in time, I think that has made an impact on Hamas. So I think both sides take equal credit, and I think even today President Biden has stated that the transition will take in such a pace that the follow-up is carried out by the Trump administration, and he also said it is the credit to the people of America. So we'll finish on that account. Now coming to your question, rebuilding, how this ceasefire takes place. See, everyone wants peace. There is no doubt. But there are a large number of contentious issues. One of the biggest contentious issues for Israel is, can an October 7 be repeated? And their aim is very, very clear that there will be no more October 7. And therefore, their strategy would be, which was, first is elimination of Hamas, which as on date, I would say has not been totally successful. But yes, degradation has taken place to quite extent. But now we have to remember, large number of Palestinians, especially the youth, would definitely get motivated to take revenge in the longer run and therefore additional cadres of Hamas would be generated or be created. So that is the point one. Now, point two is, uh, again, since the aim is very clear that there should be no repeat of October 7, therefore, who will govern Gaza? And here is a contentious issue because President Trump also does not endorse the two-nation theory. This is or a two-state theory, whereas Biden and his vice president and his entire team was always saying that Palestinian homeland is required. Now, with this contentious issue coming about by Trump's statement, and I do not know how it will unfold. Yes, West Asia, all countries desire peace. Things have happened quite favorably in Lebanon, in Syria, to some extent in Iraq, and I think to quite a great extent in Iran itself. However, Houthi has yet to be taken care of because they have now been emboldened, and every practically day they are launching missiles on the Israeli territory. So the threat remains, and it is also affecting Egypt to a large extent because the trade through Red Sea is affecting even Egypt badly, and of course the world trade because they are losing a daily, whatever trade income was that Egypt is the start of the Red Sea from that side, Mediterranean. So it is impacting everyone, but actually the future remains very uncertain. Will this temporary ceasefire last? That is also a $1 million question. Will all hostages return? That is also a $1 million question. It is each day how things can unfold. One side, right now, of course, you raise the question that yet Israelis are bombarding and Hamas is also active. This will carry on because the ceasefire, temporary ceasefire becomes effective from this Sunday. That means 19. So they have got full leeway to do whatever it is. And thereafter also, how the hostages are going to be identified, who will be released, what is the exact quantum of hostages on the Palestinian side has not been specified. It is stating large numbers. Earlier it was very clear. For one hostage, Israeli hostage, there were 4 Palestinians. So all these contentious issues remain, and finally it is the governance. Even if, let's assume everything goes as per plan, what is going to be the end state? Who is going to govern Gaza? That is the issue where President Trump himself is always stressing that he does not believe in the two-state theory. So really, it is very unpredictable. Now, and President Trump is, as it is, a very unpredictable person. Sometimes it may suit one party, sometimes it may suit the other. So we have to do wait and watch. Yes, the desire for everyone is to have peace, but how it will manifest is a big question mark because the personalities involved, the aims involved are varying of everyone. Palestinians want a separate homeland. Israelis don't want a repeat of 7 October. They don't even want a separate Palestinian homeland. They want that they should remain under their control. So it's very uncertain. Let's be optimistic. You rightly mentioned in your narrative somewhere that this is an opportunity where everyone can exploit. But how it will be exploited, that is a question mark, Shreya.
Absolutely. In fact, as we speak, and on that note, let me quickly just play out this particular response from Joe Biden today in his farewell address as he was speaking of the agreement. Let's quickly take a look as to what he had to say.
Folks credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you. My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from the Oval Office. Before I begin, let me speak to important news from earlier today. After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, by my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be, working together as Americans.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue with the discussion on this very matter with our panel of guests, Dr. Hussain, I would want to come to you next and in fact throw a question to you which has been raised by both our other panelists, which is, who will govern Gaza then at this given point? Because there are still a number of negotiations which are still out there. these terms haven't been finalized, and it will roll out eventually in the second and third phases of this very ceasefire deal. So at this particular point of time, the question is, who will govern Gaza? What do you think?
My good intention is that let's peace give a chance, and Trump has tried to give peace a chance. It is a successful one, number one. Number second, that Arab countries have agreed to take the prisoners released by Israel. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, and all these countries are ready to take the prisoners in their countries. So number one. Number second, it shows the inclination of the Arab countries to stabilize the region, and I feel that there might be a consensus among the Arab countries to handle and govern the Gaza and peace there. And finally, what I find that without two-state solution, where they are going to dump the 6-7 million Palestinians, which why Netanyahu is continuing the attack is still because he wants to save his government. Netanyahu is destined to go to jail. This is a fact if his government collapses, and it will collapse certainly if Trump comes to power. So I have no doubt that all the countries have agreed to handle the region. Even Iran has also agreed to handle the region. So there is no crisis that who will govern the post-Hamas and Israel deal scenario. Number one. Other point is that I don't only Yemens are there. Yemen has already declared, Houthis have already declared they are fighting to resolve the crisis and genocide in Palestine. After that, they will stop their own wars. So what I feel that world is also watching that there should be a peace and there will be a consensus, and rebuilding process will start from the Arab countries there. So I have extreme faith in this process. So I have no doubt. All the bad, all the negative things, what will happen, who will govern, what will happen to Israel, and all this will be sidelined.
Right, Dr. Hussain. In fact, Major General Meston, would you say this particular ceasefire deal might actually affect Netanyahu's administration at this point? And when I say that, tell us how it will affect negatively for him, his government and his governance over Israel at this given point?
See, all said and done, to start with it, I would say that October 7, actually, if we want to pinpoint the responsibility, there is only one person who should have taken on the responsibility, that is President Netanyahu. Because whatever he was doing, the judiciary reform, the country was divided for about weeks and weeks together. There were, protests from both sides, and therefore security took a beating. And therefore, the first question now is, when this deal will have to be passed in the cabinet, and the two hardliners, they are resenting this deal. I think the whole issue is, what Israel can now do is that firstly, they cannot finish off this Hamas ideology. More Hamas cadres are a likelihood because the kind of destruction they have seen over a long period of time. So therefore, they would be motivated to hit back. There is no doubt that's a normal psychology. Now, what Israel has to do is, they have to prevent October 7, not to state that, who governs it. I think they have to enhance their own security measures, which they faltered here. They have one of the finest surveillance measures, intelligence setup, but I do not know why it happened. And I think the blame again is on President Netanyahu. So therefore, all Israelis, I'm quite sure, would at the end of the war, whenever it ceases, a day will come when it ceases, they will all look forward to that Netanyahu should get his due in terms of whatever it is, justice. And I think he will definitely not be continuing in power. His strategy is to continue to, bombard Gaza, continue to engage, so that, he is considered as an important figure to continue to suppress Gaza or the Palestinian issue, and therefore he's buying time. But this someday will not last, and he will duly get justice. So who governs Gaza is actually a main issue, and he had pointed out, Dr. Zakir Hussain, one of the proposals is to have a African, Arab people deployed there. Even military peacekeeping force can be deployed For example, African peacekeeping force has been deployed in large number of their own nations where problem is there. So Arab kind of a peacekeeping force possibility exists. And I think the lead role here, President Trump can take, because I see something on the cards is a likelihood of a Israel, Saudi Arabia, sort of a pact, which has happened with other nations. That is likely the Abraham Accords, which he was trying to follow it up. And if that happens, Saudi Arabia, therefore, now will become a lead player in uniting all these Arab nations to start thinking about governance in consultation with United States and also with Israel, because their security concerns have to be also taken. So yes, positivity exists, but we have to look for practical solutions. So one of the practical solutions is this may happen, but President Netanyahu, in the long run, I think he will not last and he will get his due justice by the Israeli system.
Right. So, from what we understand at this given point is that plenty is anticipated and expected from Trump 2.0, especially when we speak of the geopolitical landscape and with regards to Middle East specifically. Well, I will in fact want to, conclude this discussion with Mr. Melchior's comment. I will come a full circle with this discussion, Mr. Melchior, and I will use the term sustainability yet again in this very question because, and with regards to the fact that will this ceasefire agreement be taken as a precedent for the future times? Given the instability that still in fact haunts the Middle East, do you think this will become a precedent to follow for the coming times?
That is a very good question. First, I want to go back to the question of who gets the credit. There's an old proverb that says that success has many fathers and failure has none. And the fact that everybody's running to the front to get the credits mean that maybe it's going to be successful, which we all hope it will be. That is on this front. I also want to correct two factual assumptions that have been in this conversation. One is Netanyahu going to jail. His court and his sentence are going to carry on for 2 or 3 years still to go and have nothing to do. The Israeli legal system, as opposed to the American or French or other systems, does not discriminate a presiding head of state. So when his sentence is given, if he's found guilty and if he's found to go to prison, which I personally don't believe is going to be the case, he will do so, but it has nothing to do with this war or him staying in power. Most polls show that he will lose if we had elections today. But I think that if this ceasefire holds and if there is a normalization process with Saudi Arabia, he may actually want to go to election riding on the back of that success. So I will not say goodbye to him yet. I think the Middle East is always full of surprises, and I am not writing anyone off the lists. Who is going to govern Gaza is a very important question, mostly for Gazans who deserve a better life. The word genocide was used here, which I have to object to because there's a clear definition of genocide. And even if you look only at Gazans as a separate people, which they are not, they're part of a Palestinian people, the numbers there and the way it was happened have nothing that resembles, unless we call Second World War Allies' attack on Germany a genocide. So please do not use those words if they're not correct. There have been many attempts and many ideas. What Israel would like to see, as the general keeps saying, no more 7th of October. And for this, this is the reason Israel was insisting on staying on the Philadelphia route, which is the border between Egypt and Gaza, which from most of the arms and equipment had entered the Hamas. So this is something Israel wants to prevent. And the main question Israel will ask at phase 2 negotiation is who observes this border, who watches the Rafah crossing, and who makes sure that there are no more smuggling tunnels between Egypt and Gaza. This is going to be a big bone of contention because having an Israeli force in the middle of Gaza, between Gaza and Egypt, is something Hamas will not agree to and something Israel will insist on. And if it does not get that, it will want some kind of external power. But the question is, who do the sides trust? Can it be US troops? Can it be an Arab coalition led by Saudi Arabia? That is to be seen. And then the big question in the end, and you know that control is everything, with the supplies coming in now and with Hamas still in power, Hamas is most likely going to be the one who administers the supplies and collects the revenues. And therefore, we will most likely see Hamas staying in power The Palestinian Authority has said it is not willing to play along with that, and if they get control, they want full control. We saw what happened last time when Hamas won the elections and executed Palestinian Authority officials. So there are many, many unsolved issues, and even though I'm an optimistic person, and I believe that the ceasefire with Lebanon will hold and even improve relations, and I think we saw the Houthis announcing that they are ceasing hostilities against Israel because of this ceasefire, without, by the way, saying what's happening with them in general, because there's still a war in Yemen internally and with the neighboring countries, which has nothing to do with Israel, but it should be a world problem, an Indian problem. So there are still many, many challenges out there. If we manage to win just with this ceasefire, holding all hostages coming back, and really cease the hostilities around Gaza, and Gaza flourishing and becoming the Singapore we all hoped it would, then I think everybody's going to be happy.